Hello, everybody. We're back today with the Rack of Rack Attack Gamer YouTube channel. And the topic, which is a favorite of his, is social media censorship of political content. And case in point that everybody's talking about now is the New York Post article on emails with Hunter Biden and photos found on a laptop that he apparently left at a repair shop. People have gotten a hold of that and they are spilling the contents of it. And Twitter and Facebook are blocking the posting of it and shutting down sites of people who are trying to do that. So, again, the censorship, selective censorship, has been going on for some time, but this is reaching a new height or low, as you might put it. What do you think, Rock?
It's way out of hand. What did they just banned a secretary, press secretary?
Yeah,
I think
McEnany, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's way out of hand, and she's not the only one. There's been a good handful of people on Twitter that have either had their accounts locked or they've been outright banned for distributing this stuff.
Hmm.
I think Twitter's point of view is that it comes off of a hard drive, therefore it's a hacked material, and they don't allow hacked material on their
Yeah.
site. Yet the hard drive went from the repair shop to the FBI, and the FBI or somewhere along that line. Oh, the guy made a duplicate,
Yeah.
and he gave that to Giuliani.
Yeah.
So they're calling that hacked material.
Yeah, and apparently, reportedly, at least by that guy who had it in his repair shop, it said he handed the original to the FBI, the whole laptop. They did nothing with it, but he made a copy of the hard drive for himself, and that's the one that Giuliani was given, or a copy of that copy. And that's how this has come to light. Now, Facebook and Twitter are both saying, well, we don't know if it's accurate, we don't know if it could be verified, but since when has that stopped them from posting stuff critical to Trump and other conservative voices?
There's much more teeth that is than there is of the Russian hoax. That's
Yeah,
for sure, or the Russian hacking thing.
yeah,
That whole Russian Trump scandal thing, that doesn't have no teeth at all. But this has material, written material, emails, pictures, and for some reason this is a bunk story according to them.
yeah. Well, I mean, the point is, you let it get out there, and then you have it debated, have it investigated. Ask Biden or the Biden camp, is it true? They're not denying it directly so far. They're kind of talking around it that there was no such meeting listed in his logbook. Doesn't mean there wasn't a meeting; it just wasn't listed. So they're doing performing somersaults and get around this. Now, you'd been saying before what was going on with the algorithms, where they were burying stuff that they didn't like, mostly conservative speech, and at times it disappeared altogether. And this had been going on long before this came up with the New York Post story. So recall some of that for us, Rock. How
Well,
they how they bury it.
2 years ago in August, Alex Jones was the first major one. He wasn't the first one, but he was the first major one of a news media type personality to get banned off of Twitter,
Yeah,
Facebook, Instagram. I don't remember exactly the exact listing, but I think on day one he was banned from 40 different sites.
yeah,
By I think 2 weeks after that, it rose to about 200 different sites he was banned off of, including financial sites like PayPal or maybe credit card processing sites.
yeah,
I forget the exact list, but that's a heck of a lot of sites that were banning Alex Jones. Now, since then, we've had people, regular news media. We've had YouTubers. We've had all the way up to Trump himself having
yeah.
tweets altered, removed, or whatever. And now we have the press secretary. So it's accumulated ever since. It's gotten bad enough to where too many people are getting banned
Well, but you were saying,
or censored.
but before months ago, we were talking about how it's increasingly difficult to find alternative voices outside of the mainstream narratives. It's either way down in the search engines or it completely disappears, correct?
YouTube is the one that's the most prominent, I think, with that. When I used to do searches for particular topics on YouTube, like say 2+ years ago, the terms that I was searching would come up to the top. They
Yeah.
would come up to the top with regular people discussing, the events or whatever it is that I was looking for. And now it's no longer that way. Now you're hard pressed to find anybody that isn't mainstream news on a YouTube search. If you search anything even remotely newsworthy, all the regular mainstream media stuff pops to the top, CNN, MSNBC, and so forth. And you'd have to scroll through, 100 listings before you start seeing some regular YouTube person talking about the same type of material.
Yeah, that's been going on for some time. Now, of course, they make the argument that since they're private corporations, they could do it.
Well, yeah, but it's killing our country. I mean, okay, that's a semi-valid argument. It's a nice end around to the First Amendment, to free speech. If see, there's a way of walking this whole thought area of like, well, this is a normal activity. It's being done by private companies who can do whatever they want and so
Yeah.
forth. I don't take that normal stance. I just can't go there. I try to play it with you a little bit, but I can't go there and I can't stay there. I gave you in one of our previous videos, there's these 45 goals of communism. One of the goals is controlling all the media, basically. I mean, and that's kind of what they're doing. And if you go through all the other 45, you can see that we're in deep trouble. Something's going on here bigger than just media censorship from private companies that just want to do things their way.
Yeah, well, I mean, put that aside for a minute in terms of how this could be legally corrected, if you want to use that term, corrected or at least modified. There are some arguments that these social media platforms of other private companies, they have become, in effect, a public marketplace of ideas, a platform, a public space. And that may be a way of attacking it legally to prevent the kind of censorship that they're engaging in. Now, whether how that would work out through the courts, I don't know, but there's been arguments made along those lines. In fact, following the censorship by Twitter and Facebook of the New York Post story, Senator Ted Cruz, and others have now called for subpoenaing the CEOs of Facebook and Twitter. Twitter is Jack Dorsey. Facebook, of course, is Mark Zuckerberg. Draw them before a Senate committee, drag them before the committee through subpoena, and ask them why they're doing this and what is their standards of doing it and is it consistent. Ted Cruz's and others' contention is that they're selectively censoring the conservative voices and not the liberal voices. Now, being in the news media for most of my adult life, I don't think any of this should be censored. Uh, Legally, whether they could do it or continue to be allowed to do it is another question, but in terms of public interest, it's clearly much more in the public interest to not have censorship, have it thrashed out, argued out, challenged, counter-challenged in the public marketplace of ideas. The First Amendment, insisted on by Thomas Jefferson, despite his anger with the newspapers of the day. He said they were full of lies. They were scandal sheets. They carried libel, and a lot of them were really very partisan. But despite that, and he was subject to this himself in newspaper articles, despite that, he insisted on the First Amendment because he said in balance, it would provide enough information from all sides of the political aisle, all persuasions, so the public would have a chance of coming to its own conclusions if they have enough information, despite the fact that a lot of it would be slanted one way or the other. But again, the First Amendment allowing that free interchange arguments and expressions of various viewpoints, whether it's propaganda or not, either in whole or in part. If you get enough of that going on every side, then you come to your own conclusions after analyzing all the available data.
What you're saying about pulling people in front of Congress or a committee or whatever
Yeah,
and questioning them, well, this was already done. This has already been done. Somewhere around maybe a year ago or thereabouts, a little over a year, whatever. They already did this with Zuckerberg and
Yeah,
Facebook and Twitter
right.
and whatnot. And the Congress men or whoever was questioning the representatives of Twitter and Facebook would ask certain questions. For instance, something to the effect of, "Well, are you censoring people?" And they would just simply say, "No, no, no, we're not doing that."
Yeah.
Um, so, I mean, this has already been done. I don't think Congress understands technology to the level that they need to understand technology to be able to hold these people's feet to the fire. They can't tell when they're being lied to.
Well, another approach might be applying the existing antitrust laws, which are on the books but seldom used in recent years, to break them up as monopolies, where if you force them to be downsized, it would allow for more competition and similar social platforms that would give you an alternative to post your stuff without censorship. But again, there hasn't been any solid or vigorous move to apply antitrust laws.
I don't know what the delay is with the Trump administration regarding the censorship because they should have hopped on this a long time ago. Now we're only less than a month out from election, and the same stuff that's been cried about for the last 4 years about Russians interfering with our elections and posting stuff all over the place to try to sway our election. Well, that's what's happening with Twitter and Facebook. They are swaying our election. This
Yeah,
election is already contaminated because of this stuff.
yeah, and I don't remember Facebook or Twitter censoring anything about the Russian hoax, as Trump calls it, maybe with good reason.
Let's
There have been a lot of stories with unnamed sources, kind of convoluted ways of getting to the out to the public, and there was no censorship there. There was no concern that it might not be accurate, blah blah blah. So I mean, clearly this is a pattern of censoring conservative speech, and I'm not taking sides on conservative or liberal speech. I'm just saying, they should be given an even chance to be expressed rather than it being selectively censored. And as a matter of fact, Trump has already issued an executive order along those lines to prevent the censorship, but that hasn't gone anywhere. And I think Facebook or Twitter or both, or sites, groups associated with them or in sympathy with them, have filed a lawsuit against Trump's executive order.
Well, you're talking about remedies. That would be one of them. Executive order that would have teeth. Apparently, this one doesn't. We discussed
Well,
maybe.
it doesn't have teeth yet because it's already being brought before the court. The lawsuit's been filed, so that'll have to be thrashed out legally. So it's a long way from taking effect.
See, it's hard for me to stay on this side of the fence with this because, from my perspective, we're in a war. This is a war. We're being attacked. This is a war. It's not bombs. It's not missiles. It's not gunshots. It's not anything like that. It's an unusual war. It's a war of ideas and censorship. Why are these companies that are supposedly American companies censoring one side? Why? Uh, they've either been infiltrated or they've been compromised in some way, in my opinion, by quote unquote, let's just say enemies to the United States. If the United States is the First Amendment, then someone blocking the First Amendment or not following the First Amendment is anti United States, anti First Amendment. We're in a war. People are looking for bombs and missiles and stuff like that. Well, this is a different kind of war. The United States has a super military. And nobody wanted to go against that big, expensive military of the United States. So they did it a different way. They went through infiltration. They went through psychological operations. They went through, stuff along those lines to where it's sneaking up on us. Our country's being ripped out from under us, and like hardly anybody's noticing.
Well, without going as deeply as you are on
No,
those
we
lines,
got to go we got to go one step deeper, just one step deeper. And that is, we're talking about what could the courts do? What could Trump do? Could we do executive orders? Could we have a antitrust thing? At this stage of the game, if we are under military attack from some enemy, Send in the military. Take all the people from Twitter and YouTube and anywhere else, throw them in Gitmo, sort them out later, let them have their trials and day in court. But this has to stop. This is the interference with an election.
Well, I mean, but that's a dangerous road too when you start bringing in the military, throwing people in jail. But I'm saying the overall concern here, the big picture is censorship of any type. You know, it's control of information, and I'd be just as upset if the conservatives were controlling information, if the shoe were on the other foot. You know, neither side should be able to control the narrative, and it just so happens now the liberal elements are controlling the narrative and suppressing conservative voices. But again, it'd be just as upsetting if the opposite were in place now. You know, there shouldn't be favoritism on any. Should be a free flow, free exchange of information. That's the public interest, and that's the First Amendment. Unfortunately, or whatever, it doesn't apply to private corporations, but in effect, they are public forums. So that's the dilemma right there.
Don't know what you want me to say because I can't play ball in that field. I see this as an attack on America. I see this as an attack on America, and our military has been established to protect the United States of America. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't send in the military in some form, maybe just Marines or whatever, to take over these companies, get their paperwork, see what the heck's going on, because, in my opinion, this is an attack.
Well, you know, then how can you be assured that if they attack these companies and CEOs, that what's put in place is going to be a free flow of information? Or will he who controls the military then conveniently set up a media that just tells his side of the story? That would be just as dangerous.
They don't have to set up a media. We have the laws in place. It's the First Amendment. The law is not being followed. The law in our country, from Twitter and YouTube and so forth, is not being followed.
It is being followed. That's the problem. There's no controlling uh, uh, legal method so far of preventing this. Now they may change. They may change the telecommunications law. There's some talk about that, about knocking out Section 230, which gives immunity to social platforms from scurrilous material. But if they're treated like broadcast stations, then they have to allow any kind of political ads, whether it's considered false or not. So that's a tack that's already being mentioned. How that'll play out, I don't know. But I mean, clearly something should be done, but it has to be done in the right way because you know it's a slippery slope. Whenever you start controlling, and this would be a control of the current setup of public information, you got to be very careful that it's done properly.
Right. You're talking about between the difference between a forum where the business is not responsible for what people post, as opposed to a publisher which actively goes in and edits. And they've been given this forum status so that they don't get in trouble, that they're not liable for what people say. Yet they've been also acting as a publisher by doing this selective editing.
It also makes them not liable for not publishing certain things that they consider offensive or inaccurate.
Offensive. We need to get rid of that word. Is it illegal or is it not illegal? I mean, is somebody threatening the life of someone? Then you take down the post, you turn it into the proper authorities, you have them follow up with it. And if there's no illegal activity going on, then leave it alone.
Getting back to whether the New York Post story is accurate, again, the Biden camp so far hasn't denied it. They're merely talking around it. Like one of the things they said was that there was no meeting logged into their schedule book that day, that there was such a meeting as alleged by the emails that have been produced. There was no meeting between the sitting vice president, Joe Biden at the time, and an official from Burisma that his son was the board he was sitting on. So again, there's no direct denial, and interesting trove of pictures that they've come out now. We've got some there that we could show. There's Hunter, with a crack pipe looks like. A crack pipe hanging out of his mouth. He looks half dazed. And there's another one where he looks open shirt, and I don't know what all that was about. But I mean, those do look like pictures of Hunter Biden. That's another one from the laptop. So, are they real pictures? Have they been photoshopped? Again, the Biden camp is not saying that it's all phony. So that in itself is very interesting. Also, that there's Biden, Joe Biden has been on record saying that there was no communication between himself and his son about him sitting on the board of Burisma and other companies. He knew nothing about that. His son didn't talk to him about it ahead of time. And but now there's a clip showing that he was denying that. But of course now that's contradicted by the
convincing
contents
that we
of
should be
the
providing for
laptop.
loan
Now here we
guarantees. And I
have
went
the
over,
clip if we could hear that.
I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, I'm not going to, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid at the time. Well, there's still, so they made some genuine, substantial changes institutionally and with people to convince.
Yeah, well, there he was, openly bragging that he got the prosecutor fired, the prosecutor who was investigating the company, Burisma, that his son was attached to. So, yeah, he's already said that he had a hand in firing him. And then there's emails from the laptop saying that there was a meeting with his father. Hunter was the go-between, setting up a meeting with an official from the company with his father, who was a sitting vice president, so therefore currying favor, allegedly, for which he was paid handsomely. Estimates are $50,000, $80,000 or more per month for his sitting on those boards. Why did they hire him? No experience. He'd been thrown out of the army for drug use, didn't have a job. Then suddenly he's making tons of money sitting on the boards of these companies that his father could have an effect on. His father was in charge of the Ukrainian affairs for the United States at the time, and here his son is sitting on a board in Ukraine, and also apparently in China the same scenario was happening. So there's a lot to answer for, but of course the mainstream media hasn't been pressing Biden very much on that. Biden gives a quick denial. They ask him maybe once or twice and then move on. So, it's not a openly aggressive press, at least when it comes to questioning Biden on any missteps, in contrast to how they're constantly on Trump. And this is an endorsement of Trump or a condemnation of the Democrats, but I'm saying it's an uneven media playing field here, which is not right.
Regarding that video that we just watched, I forget who it was. I believe it was one of the New York papers. I'll just leave it like that. That came out and say that they checked into this alleged thing that Biden was going to withhold or threatened to withhold $1 billion unless the prosecutor was fired. They said that they checked into it and that there's no truth to it. Now, many people know of this clip. I mean, is it lies, or is it just what are they doing? Why are they coming out and stating that they've investigated and that there's no truth to it when this clip exists?
Well, what I remember was the way they rationalized it was that the firing of that prosecutor had nothing to do with the prosecutor's investigation of Burisma. They were saying that was completely unattached to that this prosecutor was corrupt and therefore the U.S. and other interests wanted this prosecutor fired. That was their story at the time. And Biden's story at the time was that he never discussed his son's activities on the board of Burisma uh, before it came up for questioning. He learned about it afterwards from his son, talked to him very briefly about it, said something like, I hope you know what you're doing, and that was the end of it. Now, all these big investigative reporters on mainstream media haven't pressed him on that. They just accepted that at face value. There is, as I've said before, there is no longer any objective and hard-edged investigative reporting. People are given passes on this left and right, depending on who they are politically. And they're going after Trump tooth and nail, but Biden gets a pass on this. I mean, this should be a major thrust, especially now with the New York Post story, to find out what actually was the case.
According to Giuliani, we're only in day 2 of the release of material, and they were going to stretch it out over 5 days.
Yeah.
So, who knows what else they're going to be coming out with. According to them, they're really playing it up like they got some damaging stuff coming.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
And of course, they're attacking the credibility of the story along the lines, well, Giuliani is behind this, so therefore, how credible can it be? Well, despite Giuliani's attachment to Trump, separately is the question of is it true or false? I mean, sure, Giuliani is partisan, but that shouldn't stop questioning Biden of, did this happen? Is it true? Despite Giuliani's politics. Naturally, he's trying to get Trump reelected, but that's beside the point. But again, that's the way they're talking around this, to strike down the story that it has no real significance, that it can't be accurate, that there's all kinds of political machinations going on. It doesn't matter. Giuliani is obviously a Trump supporter. Obviously, he wants us out to help Trump. But again, completely beside the point. The main point is it true or isn't it?
Right.
And so it goes. Rack of Rack Attack Gamer YouTube channel. Thanks once again for being with us to explore the latest political concerns and controversies. We'll see you again. Thanks for joining us.